What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to JDD TV. I'm your host, Josh. We have an interesting little episode coming up for you guys, and we brought on a guest to do it. We brought on Adam from See the Rise podcast. You guys will definitely recognize him from Twitter if you guys follow anything Canadian national team related. But on this episode, we're going to break down the 25 men who we think should be involved for the upcoming World Cup qualifying window in March for the Canadian national team. We're going to talk about some of the fringe players, maybe some dual nationals that might be on there, as well as even talk about Alphonso Davies, his potential recovery, even though we may not see him. We're 99% sure not we're going to see him, but he may play a part. So hope you guys are excited for this episode. If you are, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and let's get into the episode now. All right, guys, we are here today with a special guest. A lot of you Canadian national team fans will know him. Some of you may not know his first name. I just learned it. I'm kidding. I knew his name was Adam, but we're on a very first name basis. So that's what I'm going to call him for today. Adam, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. I'm excited anytime somebody gives me the opportunity or platform to talk about Canada soccer. So it's going to be a fun one.
It is going to be a fun one. So just for everyone who may not be familiar, Adam, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know that you have a nice podcast that I've listened to and featured on once.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping you'll invite me back on now that we're on a first
absolutely.
name kind of basis. But
it was it was a good one. So yeah. So I have a podcast called the See the Rise podcast. I'm also probably tweeting way too much about Canada soccer and various other topics, but mostly Canada soccer. So if you want to give me a follow on Twitter, it's at Crates of Freights. If you talk about Canada soccer, I'm probably going to be very inclined to follow you back. And that's enough about me. And I'm just excited to get this window can't come soon enough, and I'm excited to get into some fun topics.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome because obviously, I mean, we're 99.7% qualified. So it's going to be, hopefully, as long as that 0.3% doesn't happen, one of the most historic moments in Canadian soccer history. And I'm all here for it. I'm really, really excited, which is getting the conversation going because we're craving that kind of content. So you and I today are going to basically break down what we want / think the 25 man. And we picked 25 because, I just felt like that's kind of what Herman was leaning towards, made it interesting. So we're going to break down a 25 man roster, which Adam and I came up with beforehand. We also have a bunch of fringe players that we're going to kind of talk about towards the end. And then we are going to touch on Alphonso Davies because he deserves his own special little bubble. So let's kick things started here with the keepers. Adam, get it off.
All right. So no hot takes with the first two names. We're going to have Milan Borjan. We're going to have Maxime Crepeau. The third one, there's a serious debate about. You can make a case for a number of guys. And I think probably the two front runners are Sebastian Breza and Thomas Hasal. I ultimately end up leaning Breza. I just like the way he plays. I think he has maybe a little bit more distribution. He's also a little older than Hasal, so the experience, it's negligible because he doesn't have a lot of experience in MLS, but it's a little bit more than Hasal. And so for those reasons, I'm leaning Breza as the third-string keeper. Although it would be an unmitigated disaster if we had to see either of them, because that would mean something horrible has happened to our two starting and backup goalkeepers. So it shouldn't really matter.
Yeah, I was on One Soccer was doing a stream and I just went on there to ask a question because I was genuinely curious because it was literally after the impressive performance Breza had for Montreal in the Concacaf Champions League, and Wheels read it and he was not impressed. He's like, "Are we really talking about the third keeper for Canada? Get that question out of there." So I was like, "All right, fine, you got me." But
I'm sure it matters to them. I'm sure Breza would love to get called up. So
I agree.
For us fans. Yeah, probably won't see whoever's in that third spot.
I just think it's interesting because we can use this window for any type of cap tying. Now, Breza, from what I understand, is not cap tied, and he's a dual national. He is.
So yeah, I saw that. I think he has like Norwegian eligibility. Is that true? I saw something on. I thought it was Transfer Market, and I remember just being like a little taken aback by it. Like I had no idea about that. But anyways, I don't think he's like the kind of guy that you need to cap tie because you're risking losing him to another nation. So it's just one of those things that if anything, you're going to reward good play. Hasal came off a really good game for the Whitecaps. So you can obviously they're going to have a few more games for this window, but he's a good shout. And Breza took over that number one starting job at CF Montreal. So either of those two guys, I don't think you could really go wrong.
No. And I agree with Borjan and Crepeau being above, but yes, he does have dual citizenship. His father's Polish, his mother is Norwegian, but he's got the Norwegian. So Adam definitely
I wasn't
did
making that
beforehand.
up. I wasn't.
No, you weren't. You're spot on.
I could tell by your face. You're like, really? That was my reaction too.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah. I mean, this is part of what John Herman has done in the past was trying to get as many his pool as big as it possibly can. And if he's looking at Breza and he's having good performances and he knows that there's a possibility that if he performs like this, Norway could come knocking. It's not unrealistic, but like Wheels stated and put me back down, it's the third keeper. Just relax. But I agree with you. I think that we should reward good play. I think he's on great form, and that would be my third pick. But more than likely, we're going to see him Pantomis. Let's be honest here. But let's move on now to the center backs, and we have 6 center backs here. Pretty much put them as like the left, central, and right. Even though we have 3 lefties in there, we have Kamal Miller, we have Scott Kennedy, we have Derek Cornelius, who are the 3 lefties. Alistair Johnson, of course, is our lone outside right center back with Vittoria and Henry. So no real surprises whatsoever here, Adam.
No, I think we're pretty much in consensus, and like, I'm sure there's people, subsections of Canada soccer fandom who probably like, maybe we won't see Henry or maybe one of these guys. But I just think at the end, we're so far in this process that Herdman has his guys, and for better, for worse, and for whatever reasons, we have to also remember we don't see a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. Like, we only see what happens on the field, which is obviously a big part of selection and current form. But Daniil Henry was getting called up when he was unattached the last window. There's no way he's not going to be there this window.
Yeah, and getting the move to LAFC, I thought was a great little move for him. He's got the connection there for behind the scenes, as well as now Crepeau going there. But I mean, I watched an interview with KJ that Henry did, and I thought it kind of spoke to the person that Henry is, and he knows that maybe if he's not the one on the pitch, in some way, shape, or form, he's going to have an impact on that match. And I think with this young group of guys, and he's been there for so long, he is, and it gave me a totally different outlook on him because I like Henry a lot as a person. I think there's places where you're going to see him on the pitch, but I think do or die type situations, unless you're closing out the match, Henry's probably not going to be on the pitch for me. But there's more to the team than simply just that. And that interview with KJ I thought was really well done, and I thought that Henry's confident in himself, and he got this move to LAFC. I'm hoping for a successful season, and I know that he still has a part to play this year for Canada for sure.
It's the forgotten about component of this that everyone always glosses over, but team chemistry, camaraderie, continuity, those things are massive, especially in national team setups. And then people look at like Canada, like how they having so much success. Like, we can't discount how important that aspect of it is. Having the same group, having that leadership, the brotherhood they always allude to, that doesn't happen when you cycle 10 new guys in every window. So form is great and all, but there's a reason why guys like Henry and Cavallini and maybe to a lesser extent, Liam Fraser, Sam Piet, even when they're not playing and they go a whole window without a minute, like they're a big part of the culture of this team. And so for that reason, you should expect to see them continue to get called.
The brotherhood, you nailed it. And in that interview when Ike Ugbo was messaging Henry about coming on, he almost acted like the big brother to the team, the protective father figure. And it's like, no, you want to be part of this brotherhood, you gotta prove it, my man. And yeah, so I absolutely agree. I think that'll more than likely be the 6 that we see. Cornelius, in my opinion, he's the one I'm highlighting out. I think he's in tremendous form. He's had a really good season. I'd like to see him get a few more minutes. I still feel like he's just on the outs looking in, but continuing with this form, and he's been given that chance. Maybe this is an opportunity, but we're going to move on now to the wing backs, and we have 3 to talk about. Richie Larea, who has not, I don't believe, touched the pitch since the last time he played for the Canadian national team, which is interesting. We can get into Samuel Adekubi, who has been Mr. Consistent this season, in my opinion. And you and I went a little bit interesting here because there are a few extra names, but we threw in Matthew Choinière. I think mainly due to the versatility. He can play as a right wing back because we only have 3 wing backs. He can play as a left wing back. He's on good form again for CF Montreal. Got a good chunk of minutes because of the Concacaf Champions League. Now a couple MLS games under his belt. So yeah, what do you think of that specifically around Richie Larea, and will not playing for Nottingham Forest have an impact on the amount of minutes he may get this upcoming window?
I think it might have an impact on the amount of minutes, but it should not have an impact on whether he's called or not. He's a pretty big part of the team, and he's been a mainstay. He's kind of, I would say for the most part, a locked in starter on this team. If they play 4 at the back, if they're playing 5 at the back, which is their preferred formation, as a wing back, he sort of made that spot his own. So I don't really think it's going to factor into him being called. I don't think Herdman will think twice. And like I said, they have this kind of thing going. Herdman calls like a 95% of the squad is the same every time, right? He wants to keep it together, and he's definitely not going to let club form for a guy like Richie Larea, who's one of his go-to guys, be the reason why he stays out. Having said that, I really hope he does get games under his belt soon, because long term, it's detrimental to not have him, or to have him playing, I should say. And for the other 2, Sam Adekubi, in good club form, was great for the national team last window, was maybe the man of the window. If that was if you could give anybody that title, he was right up there. And then Matthew Choinière, I'm so happy we're having an opportunity to discuss him, because he's been awesome for CF Montreal. He's taken a starting fullback spot in that kind of left wing back role, but he can play on either side. He's a natural midfielder converted to wing back. He's familiar with the three at the back setup, which is a huge thing, especially from somebody who's not been called in the past to Herdman setup, because he's going to have a positional understanding of how to play not only as a wingback, but how to play as a wingback beside Kamal Miller and alongside Alistair Johnston. And so these are his teammates, and even Samuel Piette to a lesser extent, right? So it's like these are that you can't understate or overstate the importance of having that familiarity. So it's going to be an easy transition. There's some other names that I'm sure we'll get to later that we were having a tough time leaving off this list because they're in great form also. But we ended up, for all those reasons I just sort of stated, we ended up leaning Choinière.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about CF Montreal, and the reason I was watching them a ton last season, was the way that they set up is relatively familiar to the Canadian national team. And I just thought it was so interesting when they went and picked up Alistair Johnston. I was like, you got the outside right, you got the outside left. Just put Joel Waterman in there, and you got that Canadian back line, Choinière, like ZBG. You could have an entire back five with President Net. So it's interesting, and I absolutely agree with your point there. But like we were talking about, I mean, there's another name who we'll get to in the fringe players who, in my opinion, is probably more likely to come in. But this is a player that I do think deserves a chance, and I think that that's fair. Now, just full disclosure, guys, me and Adam practiced the way that we were going to go through the positions, and I immediately messed it up. So I'm going to turn it over to you now to talk about the midfielders.
All right, so we got 6 midfielders. Estaquio is a given. I think Marc-Anthony Kaye, Jonathan Osorio, those guys are all givens. Then we get into Atiba Hutchinson, who is a given if he's healthy. There were some rumors that he suffered a knock and it will miss their derby match against Galatasaray. So that might trickle into Canada's window, that injury. I don't really know the severity or the situation, but we're assuming he's there. And if he's there, he's going to get called, obviously. Sam Piette and Liam Fraser. So, again, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of guys who help to uphold the culture of this team and who, when they've been called on, have been, solid and they've done the shirt well. So I think it's hard to imagine somebody breaking into that midfield right now. And again, maybe we can get to some names later on in the video of guys who might, but I don't think any of that's going to happen in this particular window.
No, I don't either, because I think the biggest one who, besides Hutch, whether he's going to be there or not, would be Fraser. But like you said, with that brotherhood, he's sniffed around this side for a while, and he had a pretty big part he played in that last window, and that assist that he had. He's also, like you and I talked about beforehand, he got called in when he was in the offseason. And I also think that'll have a part to play in Richie Laryea not featuring. He's used to it. He's played in the MLS before in different windows. He's gone times without playing. He's still training and whatnot, but now Fraser is playing. He's playing in the second division in Belgium, which was a move I wasn't personally the biggest fan of, but you can't argue the fact that he is getting minutes in, and he, again, could play a role in this upcoming window because he's proven that he's done it in the past. But I just also want to shout out Atiba because, I don't know if you saw the last game he had, but the man had 109 touches with a 95% pass completion. He is just a fine old age glass of wine, and it's just so much fun seeing him play at the age of 39. So I'd like to see him add to that cap list, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we nurture him and we make sure that he's fully prepared to go. And the longevity going into November is crucial because, I mean, I don't know how much longer the man can go, but he's definitely not.
He's putting up Wilt numbers in the advanced stats, and he might be around the same age as Wilt too now. So he's really like, who's it? Peter Glindo always says clone Atiba, or somebody, I think it's Peter, always says clone Atiba because what he's doing at his age is just, it's unprecedented almost. And so, they don't really have another Atiba, and it's gonna be really sad when eventually he has to hang his boots up. But we're not there yet. We're gonna milk every last ounce of quality football out of Atiba for the time being.
Absolutely, man. We will. And I mean, another one is Steph coming in, again, a player who's not playing since that January move. He's had the odd minutes here and there, a little bit of a frustrating performance for him when he was subbed off after 30. But I think, again, he'll just feel a little bit rejuvenated, an opportunity to get back in there. He got his big move. Now he gets to play probably about 3 games, given the fact that, I mean, he always plays the entirety of the matches when he's able to. He's relatively rested. So it'll be good to see. But we're going to move on to the wingers now. And there's going to be a nice familiar face that I'm hoping that will get called up. But the 4 wingers you and I discussed was Liam Miller, who's on excellent form, Tajon Buchanan as well, Junior Hoylett, and Theo Corbiano. So, Adam, the number one name in there that I think the viewers at least want to hear with and about it would be Corbiano. And how realistic do you think he's going to have an opportunity to come into this national team this window?
I think it's very high, and I think it's because they alluded to having called him last window. Obviously, last window, the situation was a little bit different, and then they were in at wing. But they still will be maybe a little more thin at wing because I don't think Davies is going to be fit to actually play any matches. We'll get to Davies in a second, but I would imagine he's going to get a call, and he's been in pretty solid form. He got a nice assist in the last match for MK Dons, and yeah, I would imagine that he said it was personal reasons. I'm assuming are club related, which was the reasons he cited as not being able to be part of the last window. But I would imagine he'll be there and he'll get the call.
Yeah, I'd hope so, because I just think the move was, again, when he's talking about, because we've seen a lot of Canadians national team move in the January window, which is incredible to see. You've seen some frustrating ones, unfortunately, like Eustachio and Larea, but you've seen some ones that have been pretty seamless. I mean, Liam Fraser walked right into Deans, and he's been a great starter for them. Coriano had a really strong start for MK Dons. He's kind of veered off a little bit, but he's still getting solid minutes and having good performances. And then Tejan Buchanan has really walked into that Club Rouge side. He's played just about every minute he possibly could. I mean, it's really encouraging to see. So it's good to see on the winger front with the new clubs and the new moves that they've had, that they should be able to play a pretty big role, I assume, depending on what kind of system that Herman's going to play. But now we're going to finish it off with our 4 strikers, Adam. So you can take it away.
Well, so I have 3 here, unless I'm miscounting. Kyle Larin, Ike Ugbo, Lucas Cavallini. Right? Am I missing someone?
Jonathan David.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that guy's kind of good, right?
Yeah, you might want to encourage him, but no, that's okay.
Sorry. Actually, I was thinking of keeping him home. No. Yeah, I have on my list here. We were doing some editing right before going to air, and so I was moving names up and down, and because we organized them in different ways. So apparently Jonathan David was one of those names. But yeah, obviously, striker's a point of depth for this team. David in good form again, finding the back of the net. And to be honest with you, I thought he was in good form even when he wasn't finding the back of the net. Like, I think a lot was made about his, he hasn't scored in 7 straight league games or whatever it was. It's like, I was watching all those games, and the guy's one of the best players on the field, like every single one of those games. He makes so much happen for Lille, even despite, not having the service to back it sometimes. But sure enough, he made that goal for himself in a great link up with Renato Sanchez. So David obviously will be there, barring health. Kyle Larin has kind of been sporadic in his minutes for Besiktas, in and out of the squad, but still, with his track record of the national team, he's always going to be getting the call. Ike Ugbo has found some regular minutes at Troy, which is awesome. And then you have Cavallini, who is in that discussion of the players we talked about before, whether they're playing or not, which he fortunately has been playing a little bit. Brian White's been injured for the Whitecaps, so he's gotten some minutes. And I don't think it matters, because you've seen him get called again where he's had no minutes. And so he's a culture guy in this team, and for that reason, he'll be there.
Yeah, and I always like to say with Cavallini, because I agree, he kind of is in that similar realm with Daniel Henry, but he's got that CONCACAF grit to him. And again, very specific opportunities he's going to have in the upcoming window to really kill the game, to frustrate, to bring that extra edge, which he's not going to get the ton of minutes that he used to get when he started with the national team, and he understands that, and he's clearly all right with it. But yeah, and I mean, touching on Jonathan David, I mean, as a striker, obviously that's the thing that comes up when you don't score goals, especially starting the season as hot as he did, got to 12 so fast, and then going 7 games. I mean, it has to weigh on the mind. I know that, and I agree with you that David played well throughout it, because he's always an energetic player. He always creates chances. He had a couple of missed opportunities, and it just gets in the back of your head. It's like, when is it going to come? When is it going to come? So I think that 13th goal for him this season is vitally important, because he's like, all right, rack and business. We're up to 13. We got the goal, and we got an opportunity to qualify for the World Cup, which is really good to see. And Larin's another interesting one. Not the best season at Besiktas. I think some of the potential moves that will be coming his way in the summer will have weighing a little bit on his mind. But on top of that, Besiktas just has not been the same Besiktas as we saw last season. But regardless, he performs the Canadian national team, and you cannot deny that. So that is the 25-man roster we put for the upcoming window. I feel relatively confident with it, besides whether Hutch plays in the Chouanier. But now let's move on to our fringe players. And we have 5 of them here. We're going to go back and forth. We're going to start with you, Adam. The first one is a player who I personally do think we're going to probably see over Chouanier, but that's Gutierrez. Yeah,
so Gutierrez is as an attacking fullback, I think that's his best strength, his delivery, his crossing, his ability to get up the flank. I wouldn't be shocked to see him again. I don't know that he's in better form than either Raheem Edwards or Matthew Chouanier. So I don't think we're going to see him on that left wing back side. But again, we're talking about having to replace Davies on the pitch. So maybe they'll take additional depth in that spot. There's a chance we see him, and I wouldn't be all that upset if we did, because I think he's a decent enough player.
What would your number one point be if you could go up to Herb and be like, "Hey, it's Adam. I have 1 point to make sure that you choose Chouanier over Gutierrez." What would that 1 point be? What would get him over the line in your books?
First of all, if I went up to Herdman, I'd probably have to say, "Hey, it's Freight's, the guy who annoys you in all your comments on Twitter," and then he would know exactly who I am. And second of all, I think we touched on the versatility. I think there's so many reasons. It's versatility. It's the fact that he's plays with half of the national team already, and the fact that he's used to playing in the same formation, which I guess Gutierrez is also. But I think it's current form ultimately, right? Like we're talking about how good he looked against Santos Laguna. I know that's not the greatest Mexican side in the world, but still a Liga MX opponent. So that's impressive. And how good he's looked to start the season. Chouanier has been really, really impressive. He's a guy who I came in watching these Montreal games with no agenda, no thought about, like as a national team player. And after 2 performances, essentially, I was like, wow, this guy's got to be on Herdman's radar. So he's impressed me. That's a simple answer.
Yeah, and that's fair. And a player that I would, if it was up to me, I would call Herdman like, "Hey, any chance you can get Raheem Edwards in?" Because I watched this guy a lot last season with LAFC, just because again they got the things for Canadians. And Mark Anthony Kay was there, Edwards is there. Now they brought in Henry and Crépeau. So I mean, got to keep a little eye on them. But he swapped and stayed in California, went over to LA Galaxy. 2 matches, arguably could have been man of the match for both. Got an assist in both matches. Got man of the match the second match, and he's looked incredible. I mean, he's a player in my opinion who can get up the pitch. And again, you can't replace Alphonso Davies. There's no denying that. But if you're looking at form, like we're talking about, you're looking at someone who can be very active from playing in the back and slot into a back 4, can slot into a back 5. I don't think you're going to find a better option on that left-hand side than Edwards. We're looking at Herdman. I just don't know how close Edwards is to Herdman's radar. I'm going to be very curious to see if there's any big surprises. Mm-hmm. But again, in my books, I feel like Gutierrez will just get it because he's been there. He's been with his side. And he's an attacking fullback. He can offer a different dimension. But any thoughts that you have on Edwards?
No, he's in awesome form, and like I would love to see him get called. I don't know that it's going to happen, but maybe there is that shot because we're talking about like the perfect time to be a fullback or wing back and get a call to the national team, with Davies probably not going to be featuring and Larrea entirely out of club form. Like this is the best time for any of the aspiring national team wingbacks to make their case, and a few of them are in really good form, and he happens to be one of them. So, that's all I've got on that. I think there's a legit shot though this window.
And another player who I'm gonna toss at you is from CF Montreal, because apparently there's a theme here. He's a dual national. Again, I've talked about this window being maybe interesting. Not that it's 100% locked up, but this could be an opportunity to bring in a player, maybe cap time, but on top of it, he's been performing well. So let's get your thoughts on Kone from CF Montreal, and as well as you have a little bit of a story around how he might be eligible for the Canadian national team.
Yeah, so Ismail Kone, he's been in again terrific form. He's in one of the real bright spots for CF Montreal. I'm gonna look forward to watching him hopefully again in action tonight at 10 p.m. He's 19 years old. He's born in the Ivory Coast and emigrated to Canada. I believe it was at like 5 or 6 years old. So he's been in Canada for a long time. He's played for the Quebec team. So he has experience representing, Quebec, but not Canada. So that's something to look out for as a guy who I think could be a part of the immediate plans, like as in potentially could play himself onto a plane to Qatar. And of course, as a 19-year-old, you're always looking at the future and captaining a guy for 2026. But I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think he's the type of player that actually could be able to help you in the short term, fill a bit of a hole in terms of your midfield depth. He's a true 8 who can, he's rangy, he can get up and kind of make plays as almost more of an attacking midfielder. Sometimes you see him drop back as more of a defensive midfielder. So a true, up and down the field, box to box 8. And silky on the ball, a guy who, if I'm Herdman, he's definitely on my radar. And I know the way that the CSAs work lately, he is on their radar. They're doing their due diligence. So I'd be surprised to see him, but not shocked, because I think if he's ready to make that commitment, Canada will probably be ready to give him that opportunity.
I would be shocked, just because I just think it'd be too good to be true. Seeing some of these young dual nationals, knowing that Ivory Coast could be sniffing around, but I absolutely agree in terms that the possibility is going to be there. I don't know how long it's going to take. This kid has obviously woken some guys up, and it's just to see if can he do it consistently this season. I think that's going to be a big question. If he can do it consistently for CF Montreal, I think because he's definitely on Herman's radar, but to get on that call up sheet, I'm just be a little curious to see. But I wouldn't surprise me if if Ivory Coast, for example, acted a little bit quicker, in my opinion, than Canada. So that's gonna be one to keep an eye on. But he definitely woke up Twitter when he had that performance, because it was something else. It was a classy performance for someone who looked like they were in the middle of their prime. But we're gonna go on a couple more players we're gonna touch on. One, I'll start off with, if Hutch doesn't come, who's potentially a couple names, and I like to throw in dual nationals and and maybe a little sneak peek for what's to come. But I'm going to throw in Harry Patton, who's not a dual national, but I think he's playing very, very well, and he's somehow ripped that Ross County side from bottom of the table up to 6th place right now, and I think he's had a huge part. He had a really strong start to the season, one of the only good performers until his injury. He's built his way back in. He's been with the national team before, and I think there's a possibility that if a midfielder is need, he could get a look. But also Stefan Mitrovic, I think, is an interesting one, playing over in Serbia. Obviously, he's eligible. He's also eligible for Serbia. And I'd be interested to see if or what it's going to take for him, because he's on good form as well. Just recently scored a goal, got his side up to 4th in the table. So any thoughts on there? And if one of those two players were to come in, which one do you think is a little bit more likely for Atiba?
Oof. Well, if it's for Atiba and the way that they like to play, it'd probably be Patton. Just it's more of the although he's been playing more attacking than Atiba plays at Besiktas, but obviously Mitrovic is playing like as a winger primarily. So it's hard to. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see either of them this window. But I would say maybe the chances of Patton are a little higher. And the reason I think we're not going to see either this window is because if any window that we're going to see any new midfielders, Patton particularly, I thought it'd be last window, right? Like they were really in shambles. They had their few MLS guys were totally out of season, and their best midfielder was out with COVID. So it's like, and we still didn't see Herdman stray from sort of the familiar faces, the guys he knew. So I mean. That's kind of telling. Like we're going to see a Liam Fraser and a Sam Piet before we ever see a guy like a Patton, at least in this cycle. That's the theme. And again, you never know once you have Nations League and all these opportunities with potential friendlies that they're going to be new guys who get involved and maybe some guys who really stand out and work their way onto the plane for Qatar. But the reality is like the pool we have is the pool we have right now. And Herdman's very, he's sticking with what's working, and I applaud him. And he obviously has a really good feel for the culture of the room. And I hope he keeps it together as much as possible. And I think, unfortunately, for a guy like Patton, who even might be in pretty good form, that probably means that he's not going to be involved in World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, I really liked Patton's season this year. Personally, I'm watching him. He's versatile again, can play from a CDM all the way up to a cam. But I absolutely agree with what you said. More than likely, it's not happening. Steph's an interesting one, just being young, playing well. But again, I do think he's on the outside looking in. But maybe one day, because again, there's a lot of Canadian dual nats out there that Herdman eventually, because he's good at it, will hunt down and will get to commit to the CanMNT national team, because that's just something that he knows is going to be important to helping this depth pool down the line. And we're going to throw two more names at you before we get on to the main man, Alphonso Davies. And they're two wing backs. One, again, I think is a very, very good opportunity that we'll see him. That's CBG. I don't think there's too much we have to say. Fits the system. He's been there. He's done that. He got called up last window. Mm-hmm. But the other one, I want to get your take on it. Shaquille Marshall-Rudy, probably not ready yet again, but this is a kid a lot of people are excited for. He's not had the greatest start to TFC. Just, again, we've seen moments, but he's getting forced to play in a back four, which I personally don't think that's meant for him. But I just want to get your take on it and how long down the line until you may see a sniff at the national team for him.
Yeah, so I think, obviously he made the MLS Team of the Week in week 1, which was crazy. I don't know if necessarily his performance was like Team of the Week good, but he was solid. And his ability to get up and join the attack. And I think he's kind of like having another midfielder out there. Like you have a guy who can really absorb pressure, so he doesn't get flustered when you press him, which is always good, especially when you're not as confident about the ball playing of your center backs. And some of Canada's center backs maybe fall into that category. So I think there's a lot of value there. And obviously his good service, good delivery. I think passing is a real strong suit of his game. So all things that can really stand out as a wing back. Unfortunately, TFC are playing him as a fully out and out fullback, along in a back four with another player who's never played fullback. So it's kind of been the back line defensively has been a little bit in shambles, but you see the moments going forward. To answer your second question, because I don't think he's going to get a call in this window, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in like Nations League, right? I think he'll be a guy who's close enough. And it's obviously going to depend on his form for TFC this season. But if he has a really good run of games for TFC, maybe we see him in Nations League, an outside shot, very outside shot, that we see him on a flight to Qatar in December.
Yeah, I think he's got a big opportunity this summer with the Concacaf U20 championship. I mean, we saw what it did to Buchanan. In my opinion, that was a real pillar for moment for him, where he took it and he got the attention, got the move, just had a whole bunch of success that followed that. So it's a real opportunity to get a lot of eyes on him. So I'm excited to see what he can do there. But the last player we're going to touch on today is the man that we have to touch on, and it's Alphonso Davies, because you had a hot take on, because I don't know what Bayern are going to do. This is a scary thing that he had to go through, and he's obviously got good news today that he's recovering from. But you had a good take that he may be there. So you want to elaborate on that, on the last player we're going to touch on in today's episode?
Yeah, I think however many players Herdman calls, I think Alphonso Davies will be a part of that call. And I think he's not going to be a part of the call to play. He's just he's one of the vocal leaders of the team. He's obviously a leader on the pitch. He's like, there's no proverbial captain for every game. Obviously, usually they just go to whoever has the most caps. So, but I mean, like, he's kind of a captain, right? He's a leader. And when people think of Canada soccer, they think of Alphonso Davies primarily, or at least first. So for that reason, I think he's going to be there. I think he'll be, on the flight with the team. I think he's going to be part of like everything the team is doing, minus training and playing. So I think he's going to be in the squad just to be in the squad. And with the understanding between Julian Nagelsmann and John Herdman that he's not going to see the pitch, and that they're going to let him come to full training first with Bayern. But while he's here, and he instead of watching our games on Twitch, as much as I love hearing his commentary, I'm sure he'd rather be with the boys and just kind of enjoying this historic moment that feels like inevitable this window.
Yeah, Canada and Bayern definitely have a good relationship back and forth. The national team has allowed him to do certain things. I'm very curious to see, because this is a very touchy situation. But I mean, he's the man. He's the man for Canada. It'd be a shame to not have him there when we qualify, when we get the job done. But we'll have to wait and see. But Adam, that is the end of the episode today. I really appreciate you coming on. We touched on a lot of players. We put our 25 together. We had a lot of the interesting ones, which I personally like talking about some of the fringe players, because it's what's to come potentially. So I'm curious to hear from you guys in the chat. Any players that we didn't touch on, any of the players that you think would have been in the 25 that we didn't mention. And Adam, one final time, just if you want to say where to find you. I mean, we already know that it's going to be Twitter, but one final time, give the plug in there before
it's going to be Twitter. So at Crates of Freights on Twitter, or if you look on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, mostly those two, you can find the CD Rise podcast. That's CV with 2 E's Rise podcast. And whenever I have an opportunity to come on any show, especially this show, I really enjoy this show. Josh does a great job. Let's talk a little bit of Canadian footy and forget about Jonathan David for a moment. I'm always excited to do that.
No, it's perfect. JD will be in the comments and just going at him.
I'm gonna get killed on Twitter.
But no, it's all right. All right, Adam, I appreciate you coming on, my man. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. It was a lot of fun having Adam on here. And if you guys could be so kind as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub as well, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers, friends.